Oh, hello everyone. Do you like my beautiful trench coat that I made in a day and a half? Yeah, so welcome back to my channel. I am here today to talk to you about this trench coat, which I love so much. I love the color I picked. I love the fabric. I love the buttons, which I will tell you more about in a minute. I love the style, I love the ties, I love everything. It's not lined, it's more for a spring coat, and I have matching serger threads on the inside, so that's good. And yeah, it turned out really well, so let's get started. I am going to pop it off because it's not that cold in my house. Okay, so basically, let me start by saying I got this pattern from the Fibremood Magazine. So this is the Fibremood Magazine. The trench coat's on the cover. They have all their patterns in the back of the magazine, and all the information's in the back, like the fabric requirements, how many pattern pieces there are, how much fabric you require, what kind of fabric they suggest. And then they have all the patterns here, which you can trace and add seam allowances, or you can get the PDF, which is what I did. There are about 17 pieces, so I didn't want to trace that many. So I ended up getting the PDF AO file, printing it at a copy shop. They also have an A4 file that you can put together yourself, but I got the AO file, printed at a copy shop, had the seam allowances included, which you can do, and then it came to my house and I cut it out, and then got my fabric and cut that out. Let me just start with the fabric requirements. So what you're gonna need is something that's more tightly woven, a little bit of drape if you want it to kind of flow well, and have some weight to it. So they recommend gabardine, which is very tightly woven, and it actually can almost repel water. It's so great. I couldn't quite find that, so I got some brushed cotton twill from fabric.com, and I absolutely love it so much. I will put a link down below to that fabric. And then I got about 5 yards because it's not very wide. I think the fabric is about 50 inches wide, or maybe a little bit less, so I needed about 5 yards. The fabric requirements are listed here for each size. So I made the small size, which is actually pretty big. I probably could have made an extra small, but my measurements were in the small size. So just know that there are finished measurements here, finished garment measurements, which can be helpful. But just know that, like, if you make it according to your measurements, it's going to have some room. It's going to be big enough for you to move around, for you to wear a sweater underneath, whatever. So I have to say, I did not expect to finish this coat in a day and a half. I have made a trench coat before. You might have seen it on Instagram. It is a Anna trench coat by Sew Over at London. And it has interlining and is fully lined, and I had to draft that lining. So this was like a piece of cake compared to that. I love how it has this rain shield. I'm just going to show this picture since I took mine off. I love how it has this little rain shield, and I really loved the wrist ties. So it's kind of what drew me to this one. It's actually a very simple trench coat. I think the most difficult parts, which I will get into, were the pockets. The pocket construction was a little bit difficult for me, but I still managed. I just followed the steps pretty much exactly. And speaking of instructions, there's very abbreviated instructions in the actual magazine, but in the on their website you can print out or just download the instructions that have all the words. Like, they're very well written and they're very detailed. And so if you want that, which I did for a trench coat, I went and downloaded them, and they were super great. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that whenever you are cutting out the pieces, which they're pretty easy to lay and cut out, and pretty self-explanatory, but when you're cutting them out, you're going to have a lot of marks for pocket placement, on your pattern pieces just to know where to put the pockets. And you're gonna have some marks for button placement as well. So I don't normally do Tailor's tacks, but I did that for this because I wanted to be a little bit more accurate. I wanted to be able to mark between both layers of fabric, or mark both layers of fabric at the same time. So I went ahead and did Tailor's tacks, and I will link a video that can help you with that I watched that was super, super helpful. So I did Tailor's tacks for some of them, and then I did just mark with my pen for other ones. Other than that, I tried not to snip. Since I knew that it wasn't lined, I've started to not snip notches into my fabric just in case they run later on, or if I snip too deep, because I knew the seam allowances were only 1 centimeter. And so I've just been marking them with my water soluble pen. So I did that. So other than that, there was really nothing to cutting out the pieces for this fabric. Piece layout was easy. My fabric, you know, Twill sometimes has a little bit of a different texture on one side versus the other. So I made sure, you know, everything was on the right side. It didn't matter if my pieces were right side up or upside down when I was cutting them out, because there's no direction to this fabric, so that was very easy. Everything was easy to cut out. The only thing that before you move on to construction, there's not that much attention drawn to the fact that you have to add interfacing onto one of the pieces. So on piece number 1, which is the front piece, there's like a little yellow highlight there. And that's basically a piece of interfacing they want you to put, and that's basically where your pocket's gonna go, and it's going to reinforce the fact that you are clipping like triangles and clipping into this area to make your pocket. So that's why you interface, so it doesn't run further and it makes it a little bit stronger. But you can just kind of cut out like a rectangle of interfacing. I used woven interfacing, and then I just, I already had my Tailor's tacks, which were marked for those that where that yellow is. And so I just laid them over the Tailor's tacks. So it's like you already have a guidance of where your interfacing needs to go. So don't forget to do that. That is important, and it's discussed over here somewhere. There's something that says where it's yellow, add interfacing, but it doesn't like mention it in the instructions or anything like that, if that makes sense. Alrighty, so moving on, the first difficult part was the pocket. And let me tell you, I know what I did wrong in my pockets, but it was kind of a little bit too late. I couldn't fix it, but they're definitely not perfect. I just did the best I could with them. So this is the pocket construction. I have a blog post that I will link below that has all the pictures of how it looked while I was making this pocket. But this is the front. It has this little flap here which is sewn down at the sides, and you stick your hand in there and then you have a nice, nice, nice big pocket. So there are 2 pocket pieces involved in this, and then there's this piece as well. And I can't explain it to you now that I've already made it, but the inside of this one actually looks, although I need to clip some strings, actually looks fairly good. It's laying pretty flat. Most of the interfacing is covered except for this part, which I can just peel off and clip, so that when the jacket opens, you don't really see what's here. The only thing that I do regret is that it told me to finish these edges, which I did, but this edge is still unfinished, and I'm not sure if I was supposed to hide it or tuck it in somewhere. I don't think I was, and so it's still raw here. And that is something that if I were to go back, I would basically just try to finish off this edge. But anywho, this side is great. The other side looks awful. I don't know what happened. Actually, I think I know what happened, but so when I was marking my jacket and getting everything ready to cut these pockets, some things weren't lining up like they were supposed to. I don't know if my marks were a little bit off, or like my pattern pieces were a little bit off, but all I'm trying to say is that this chunk of fabric here, when you are cutting, you're going to be cutting a slit in the back, you'll see in the pattern, and then you'll be cutting triangles into the corners. When you cut your triangles and your slit, no matter what your marks say, don't go way past the size of this, and you will understand when you're doing it, because then you'll have all this extra stuff and it'll like kind of wrinkle here, and you'll be trying to create a pocket that is outside of this, and that's not going to work. And so just keep in mind, no matter what your marks say or what they do, make sure that this is lined up, your ends are lined up with how wide this is. Also, when you are placing both pocket pieces on there together, let me see if I can find a picture. At one point, your pocket pieces are gonna look like this. So when you're on that part, you're not matching up raw edges, you're matching up the marks you made on the pockets with the marks you made on the coat. Okay, so keep that in mind. You're matching up like marks and not notches, but like Tailor's tacks. You're not matching up raw edges. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You'll understand when you're there. Other than that, let's see, it tells you nicely, the pattern's very good about finishing your edges when you're supposed to. It'll tell you, hey, finish this edge, because you know you're probably about to put it together or something like that. So it tells you ahead of time to do that. I went ahead and changed out my serger thread and got something pretty similar to the color so that it looks nice inside. I could have done bias bound seams, but sometimes I just feel like finishing something and getting to wear it and not really worrying about bias bound seams. Plus, I was really afraid to make this pattern. I don't know why, because it was so easy. But I was like, oh, I can't add bias bound seams on top of that. Like, what if I, don't bound the seam and then I put it together with something else and then it's like an L, or it's got a big curve and like I can't bind it anymore. And then, I guess I was just afraid. So it's definitely possible, but I didn't do it for this. The rain flap, I think, is one of the best parts of the jacket. It looks so nice and it is very easy to construct and has a nice closed-in hem right there. So I really liked that part. Let me see what else I have. I did use I didn't mention, a really thick needle, about a 14 or so, or I guess if you're using the other numbers, like 110. So I used that, and that I think worked really well, and it was actually a denim needle, so that worked really well with my fabric. Let's see what else. The top stitch, it has used top stitch a lot, like a 1/8 of an inch from a seam, and so I really like that touch, and it really makes the whole jacket look professional. I did add a top stitching element that they didn't talk about. This is actually towards the end, but they want you to top stitch here all the way up from the bottom of the hem on the outside. This is the facing right here, but it's turned back, and they want you to top stitch all the way up here, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up, and then stop here at the collar. Well, I kept going because I feel like it looks nice and it's gonna keep my facing like down a little bit better. So I kept going, and then I kept top stitching down this side. So I went all the way down there, and that looked really nice. Let me talk about these flaps. So these are the flaps on the shoulders, okay? You have 4 buttons in the front, and then you have these flaps on the shoulder. So I had 2 more buttons ready to use for the flaps, but then I started thinking to myself, these buttons are really big, and if I put one here, it's going to be like coming off or like hanging off the edge, and if I put one here, I don't feel like it's going to look right. Like I feel like it needs to go like right here, but I kind of like the look without a button. And then I started looking at all the pictures, and in the line drawing, there's no button there. And in the cover, she just got it tucked in. There's no button there. Same here. And I kind of like that look. So I left it alone. I didn't add a button, but I'm a little bit annoyed because it stays, but there are times where I catch it like just hanging out. So I think I will probably leave it a little bit loose like this so that it has a little bit of a buckle and some kind of texture. And just kind of tack it down here, or maybe tack it down underneath here so you can't, you know, see the stitching. So I'll probably do that at some point with just a couple of stitches so that it doesn't keep falling, because it was really irritating me. Other than that, I keep finding a lot of loose thread. I mean, is it just me, or is the loose thread fiasco like never ending when you make something? Like you think you cut them off and then here comes another one. So yeah, I love how this turned out, and let me talk about these fabulous buttons. Okay, so I was sent these buttons by Tabitha Sewer, and they are wooden. They are absolutely gorgeous. One side is a lot more polished than the other side, although I still like the other side. It's a little bit rough, but I still like it. But I wanted them to all be uniform, so I put them all on the polished, more polished side. Although I really like how this one has like a little bit of dark wood grain there, and like this one doesn't. I mean, they're just so beautiful that they're different like that. And then the size is irregular, which I really like. One thing I just noticed is that I probably should have turned this button around because the wood grain's going this way, and on this one it's going this way, but shh, don't tell anybody. I just noticed that. I used my machine to put these on, which was a little bit difficult because it's such a thick button. I did use my machine to create the button holes, and since they're such an irregular shape, I knew it would be a little bit odd and weird to get them into the buttonhole. So what I did is I measured on my machine. I have a little tool that can measure the size. It's just like a little ruler on my machine, and I went ahead and measured like the widest point of the button, like right here it's kind of got a little buckle, and then right here it's a little bit big, and so I would measure it from here to here. Like I wouldn't take this flat part and measure there, because then it would be smaller, and then the button isn't that small and it wouldn't fit in my buttonhole. So I went ahead, measured this, and since the button is so thick, you really need to account for that as well. So whenever I got this measurement, it was about like 31 millimeters, and I think I made my buttonhole 35, or no, I think it was 32 millimeters, and I made my buttonhole 35. I think I should have done more because these are not smooth buttons, so they're a little bit more difficult to pass through a buttonhole, even though it's totally possible. It's just that they're not gonna like slide through. They have a smoothness, but the wood, it has more friction than like a glass button or something like that. So I think if I could go back, I would make like 36 or 37 millimeter buttonholes maybe, just to make sure that it's big enough. And if you don't have a buttonhole foot on your machine that can make a buttonhole that big, because I know on my old machine I don't think it could do that. What you can do is you can do half a buttonhole, like where it goes up, comes over, and then starts to come back down, and then just make sure it doesn't do the side to side motion on the very bottom. Or you can manually make a buttonhole by just doing very, very close like zigzag stitches all the way up with a short stitch length and whatever width you want. And then you come over, and then you do a wide one, and then you come over and come down, and then so there's a way to do all that. This is not a video to show you how to do that, but there are some out there. Other than that, I already talked about the fit. The fit is really good. It is a little bigger than I expected, but like that's totally fine because if I have a big sweater or something underneath, that'd be great. Oh goodness. Anyways, so yeah, I think that's all with this. It was very simple. Like I said, it did not take very long. Everything was straightforward. Even attaching these little things was straightforward. I don't remember it saying to attach these at the hip, but there's clear marks for them, so I just went ahead and put them there. But yeah, other than that, everything was easy. The belt looks great. It's a great size. The length is perfect for me. And yeah, so check out my blog post if you have any questions about the pocket. I do have a lot more pictures. And definitely let me know if you have any questions about this jacket. I really enjoyed making it and I really love the color, and I think I'm going to wear it a lot because I love the way jackets make everything look. So just to finish off, I'm gonna put up a couple of pictures that I've taken in this jacket because it's been worn a lot. And so I hope you enjoy. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button down below and the notification bell if you want to be notified when I have another video. Go ahead and like this video so other people can find it. It helps other people find it. And enjoy the photos. See you next time. Bye! Georgie, did you sneeze? Oh! Oh my goodness! Okay, that's enough.